There was such terrible hunger. I remember one day in the kolkhoz, a camel died. The people distributed the meat amongst themselves. All my family was given was a hoof. We didn't know what to do with it. We took the skin off, but you know it wasn't meant to be cooked. It wasn't meant for anything. We couldn't bite it, so we chewed on it. We chewed on it and spit it out. It seemed impossible. But we did these impossible things in order to survive. I also remember when our mom brought us millet shells to eat in the winter because there was nothing else. She cooked them, but this also wasn't really possible to eat. But again, we chewed on them just to have a little something in our mouths and to kill the hunger a bit. The winters were terrible, difficult to survive. Our mom told us that this kolkhoz used to have a lot of resources, but because it was wartime, everything went to support the Russian army. For example, cabbages, of which there were plenty, and so gorgeous. The cabbages were so big, sometimes as big as 25 pounds, which our mom told us was very unusual. But for us, even for the Russians in the kolkhoz, it was impossible to get even a good little piece of cabbage. What they did was to take the waste, the rotten leaves, as they did in Poland for cattle in the winter, and put them into silos. Later, throughout the winter, they fed us this, let's call it a kind of cabbage soup to us. So there was cabbage in it, and lots of worms squirming around in it too. The worms were really big because it was prepared under unhygienic conditions. It was made in dirt and filth, but we ate it. If we didn't, we would. It was the only food available in the winter months. That is what life was like there. In the summer, we had been there for, I think, 2 years, living in this hole, and later they moved us, I don't know why, to a big wooden house in the middle of the kolkhoz. A few families lived there, maybe several. There were many halls, and every family got one small room for themselves. But this house was terribly infected by bedbugs. In the evenings, when the lights went off, they would come out immediately. They were on the ceiling, on the walls. They came from everywhere, and we were covered in them. We couldn't sleep. We fought with bedbugs, and in the summer we slept outside under the sky. This is what it was like there. It lasted this way. It lasted for a few years. Our mom worked so hard. She couldn't be with us. I remember once, because the winters were so snowy and cold, a river flowed through our kolkhoz. In the summer, it was a small river, but in the spring, it changed into a huge, rapid river, washing away the banks, washing away the mud huts. So once we fished out a little drowned piglet. This piglet was already blue and swollen. We brought it home and, you can imagine, we ate it. We cooked it and ate it because, simply put, we had to eat something. In the spring, we went to the fields, the potato fields. It was interesting that in the fall, when they dug potatoes out, we weren't allowed to take anything for ourselves, not even a few potatoes. They had to stay in the soil and they froze in the winter. Then, in the spring, all the children went to dig up what was left of them. We cut these frozen, raw potatoes into thin slices, fried them on the stove in the kitchen, and ate them. This was how we tried to prevent dying of hunger. Our mom worked so hard and was always so far away because the fields were on the plains, a long way away from the kolkhoz. In the spring, when they gathered the hay, she worked all day. Sometimes she needed to stay into the night to finish on time. In the summer, they worked very hard with the harvest. In the fall, they dug out the potatoes. There was no rest in the winter because the people had to work to preserve the roads from snow damage. There were very terrible winters and terrible storms called burzami. They were so strong that if you went out even only 200 feet from your mud hut during the storm, you couldn't get back because you were disoriented. I remember that in our kolkhoz, a few people walked out during the snowstorm and never returned. And because there were no granaries in the kolkhoz, or barns in which to store either the straw or the hay, it was kept far away on the plains. People used straw for fuel because there wasn't any wood available during the winter. So during the winter, the kolkhoz workers had to ride oxen, which were very slow, to bring back the straw or hay to the kolkhoz. Often they would get caught in the snowstorms and they froze together with the oxen because we couldn't find them in time to rescue them. They got disoriented. They drove in different directions, so they died like this, frozen to death with their animals too. Before it was time to plant new potatoes in the spring, they gave women the job of cutting the potatoes into thin slices in order to plant them. Then these women, who wanted to feed their starving children, hid some of the thin potato slices on their bodies under their clothing. They thought they could smuggle the slices home this way, but unfortunately there was always a guard at the door who checked every woman very carefully and ordered them to return even those thin slices of potato. This is how it was. I remember once, Mommy said to us, "Children, today is Easter." Around Easter time they planted beets, or something like that, in the kolkhoz. So our mom went to the place where she planted the beets, and she dug out a few and brought them home and made a salad for us and said, "Children, today is a big holiday in Poland. Today is a very festive day, and we have only this salad for our breakfast." Our mom worked so hard all the time. I don't recall her having even one day off. I don't recall that.